Alright, what's up everybody, it's your boy DuPlays here, and we're back with some more reactions for you guys. So today, we're checking out why the Nintendo PlayStation was never released, The Dark History Episode 1. Apparently, there was a Nintendo PlayStation console. I didn't know this. I'm gonna check this out now, but before we get into it, don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, turn on post notifications, all of that good stuff. Follow my socials, my TikTok, Instagram, and Discord. They will be in the description. So I can get more likes, views, comments, shares, subscriptions, money, club, fame, success, and I can stop being a bum. Let's get into it.
In 1991, Sony announced that they were working on a brand new project with Nintendo, a Super NES compatible CD-based system dubbed the PlayStation. It was set to be a hit that would propel Sony into the video game market right next to Nintendo, not as a competitor, but as an ally. So, what went wrong? If you open up a Super Nintendo, you'll find a sound effects chip called the SPC 700. The maker of this chip? Sony. It was developed by an engineer named Ken Kutaragi, who, after watching his daughter have a blast playing the NES, decided that video games weren't just a fad or cheap entertainment. During his free time, he created the SPC 700. When Sony found out about his secret project,
If he was doing that in his free time, what was he doing in his busy time? It had to have been something even more ambitious than making a Citro CPU. Well, it's a sound chip, but yeah, still a processor of some sort.
The booming video game industry was just getting started. The success of the sound chip implemented into the SNES gave Sony president Norio Oga reason to believe that were they to make a game console, it could be a smashing success. But he didn't quite feel up to the task of entering the industry from ground zero. Luckily, Nintendo approached him with a wild idea, a CD-based system that could supplement the Super NES. In 1988, Sony began developing a CD-based add-on to the Super Nintendo. The two companies got along very well in the early stages of the project. Hundreds of prototypes were made and tested, and their future together seemed all but certain. There was just one problem. One really big problem. Sony wanted to control licensing for the CD versions of games produced for the Super Nintendo's disc format. Nintendo tried to work around it, but Sony refused to budge. The alternative was to have Nintendo control the profits and licensing for the system, leaving Sony with little reason to continue their work. In addition, Nintendo knew that developers preferred CDs to cartridges. They would likely lose many of their licensing agreements to Sony. These two entertainment giants had become accustomed to getting their way and continued trying to one-up each other throughout the project. It is at this point that I introduced.
That's crazy though. What did he say? Nintendo preferred, knew that consumers preferred CDs to cartridges? CDs do have a much higher capacity though for file size, so I guess in that aspect it would make a lot of sense.
Hiroshi Yamauchi. I'll go into more detail about Yamauchi-san in another video, but for now I will just say that this man meant business. He did not mess around, and he knew exactly how to get what he wanted. If Nintendo had unfavorable terms, let's just say that contract wouldn't be around for long. Yamauchi served Nintendo very well during his time as CEO, but his policies on licensing, distribution, and production slowly began to wear down the third-party developers who relied on Nintendo's consoles to stay in business. If he continued his strict domination of the video game industry for much longer, they were gonna break. His decision on what to do next did not help Nintendo's standing with these developers. Yamauchi-san secretly sent a few higher-ups to Europe to have a chat with Philips, Sony's biggest competitor. Philips had been hard at work on their own CDI gaming system, so the offer of CD-based games of Nintendo IPs appearing on their system seemed too good to pass up, even if Nintendo controlled the profits. Yes, Nintendo actually allowed third-party developers to make games based on Super Mario and The Legend of Zelda that appeared on a non-Nintendo system.
That's crazy. Yes, I remember I've seen this before, and it's horrible. It looks like
Yes,
I drew it.
Awful. Now, if Nintendo could get better terms with a different company, a change of plans isn't so extraordinary, it's business. However, Nintendo violated the unwritten rule of Japan and favored a foreign company over a domestic one. This was a taboo rarely violated at the time. Many Japanese game companies were upset with Nintendo for turning their backs on the mainland, so to speak, especially since.
Is it really a law, or more so just them being in their feelings? I don't know. I feel like that's something you
Japan had
can't really
recently been hit with an
restrict. I
economic
don't know.
recession. Aside from just the cultural norms of Japanese business, Nintendo decided to break the news
Cultural
that
norms. It
Sony
doesn't
was
sound
no
like it's
longer
illegal to
involved in
me.
SNES CD in the worst possible way. Seriously, it's so bad. In 1991, Sony took an opportunity at the Consumer Electronics Show to announce that they were developing a new add-on for the Super NES called the PlayStation. 2 words. It generated a lot of buzz, and Sony held their heads up high as they were about to make their first foray into a new industry. But their elation did not last long. The following day, Nintendo had their own press conference, and at this very public conference, where the press abounded and journalists were eager to hear more about this new Nintendo PlayStation, Nintendo made their big announcement. The Super Disc, as they called it, was being developed by Philips, not Sony. This is one of the darkest moments in video game history, and its consequences still resonate today. Sony president Norio Olga was incredibly mad, as one would expect, but he didn't prove to be one to explode and declare war immediately. He showed great poise and tried to patch things up with Nintendo. After all, Sony was still interested in collaborating with the lucrative game company, and in 1992 a new deal was formalized, though sadly nothing ever came of it. Just like Nintendo had secretly sought out Philips to try and take over the work Sony had done for years, Sony began preparations of their own. After trying to collaborate with Nintendo's
And I'm guessing this is how the PlayStation 1 came about, but I'll let him cook.
CD-ROM-based console, which also didn't work out, Ken Kutaragi decided that there was only one way that they were going to make it in the gaming industry. Come the next generation of consoles, they would have a surprise up their sleeve that would change everything. Remember how I mentioned that Nintendo president Hiroshi Yamauchi drove a hard bargain with third-party developers? Well, it comes into play in the following years. You see, despite Nintendo's partnership with Philips, the only thing that ever came out of it was a few CDI games using Nintendo's properties. The games were terrible, the CDI was overpriced, and, well, that was the end of it. A CD peripheral for the Super Nintendo.
Just seeing the footage of those games, and I've seen them before, make me sick. It looks like something from a nightmare.
Developers like Square, EA, Namco, and Capcom were really hoping that a deal could be struck between Nintendo and Sony or Philips,
Big
so
dogs,
that they could
too.
produce more games at a higher quality using easy-to-develop 4 CDs rather than Nintendo's clunky cartridges. Some companies had already started making games for the Super Disc that either never came out or had to be drastically altered in order to fit on SNES cartridges. Sony knew this. If they could shake up the industry enough, many of the biggest video game makers in the world would eagerly leave Nintendo and flock to their system. The 32-bit Sony PlayStation, one word this time, was announced early in 1994. It began generating buzz well before launch, as its hardware was used to run games like Virtua Fighter for arcades in Japan. It took a massive share of the market.
Look at the polygons on those character models.
Which was compounded
we've
by
come
the fact
so
that
far.
Nintendo decided to continue with cartridges on the Nintendo 64. This decision finalized the mass exodus of third-party developers from Nintendo and right into the arms of Sony. Their plan worked, and while they couldn't
It's a typical if you how does the saying go again? You want something done right, you do it yourself. Or it's kind of like a scenario where, like, as an underdog, you're trying to, like, build something with everybody. Kind of like when you have a dream or, like, an ambition and nobody sees it, so then you just have to go about it by yourself. So it's even that much more gratifying when you make it in the end on your own. Yeah.
ultimately
Let me
took
not
Nintendo
go off
down,
too
they
much.
won the next 2 generations of consoles, drastically outselling Nintendo and forcing Sega out of the business. It's easy to look at what happened here and pick
Crazy.
sides, blaming either or for causing such a drastic change in the video gaming.
Yep. How much did the PlayStation 1 sell? Hold on. Let me check. I know the PS2 is the most successful by far. Well, oh, okay. It sold 102 million. Nice. Worldwide, yeah, 102 million. And the PS2 is 160. Greatest selling console of all time. 160 million. I heard, like, earlier this year or last year, they were inflating the numbers to, like, keep surpassing the Nintendo Switch 1. But yeah, it's recognized as the highest selling console on Earth. making it the best-selling video game console of all time. Sony officially confirmed this figure in late 2024, cementing its status as a monumental success. Yeah, there it is. Triples the combined sales of the other consoles from the 6th generation. Yeah. And PS3 was what? Like 87? Okay, not bad. I think PS4 is over 100 million. Should be, yeah. 117. Not bad, not bad. The PS5, I think, is at like 60 now. Oh, we're at 80. Okay. And that was 2 months ago. Almost 2 months ago. This is 2 days short of being 2 months ago. 28th today. Alright, yeah, let's wrap this up.
Think about it like this. That cartridge-based N64 gave us some of the greatest games of all time in Super Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, and countless others. Likewise, for the Super NES, Chrono Trigger would have never been released in its current form. Final Fantasy VII would have been so different that it's tough to say whether it would have created such a revolution in the first place. Many of these games changed my life in ways I can't even describe. I think these games are perfect just the way they are. Plus, it's not like Sony and Nintendo were going to be best buds forever. All of my research tells me that Sony was going to jump into the console market whether they got their start with the Super NES add-on or not. The next gen...
Clearly, because that's what they did, and they were very successful for it. In fact, it was probably for the best.
Certainly have seen Sony creating their own system and challenging Nintendo directly. So if you're feeling down about...
Yeah, exactly. It would have just come to that eventually anyway. At the end of the day, it's two separate businesses, and business is business, and competition comes with that. So it's the name of the game.
Just remember, things like this happen, and it's not always pretty. But in the end, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yep. Why does this guy from Chrono Trigger just look like some Dragon Ball Z character? Anyway, guys, yeah, that was Nintendo doesn't make an amazing console. Sony, fine, I'll do it myself. I can't believe they got that on camera.
Sony's biggest.
Hold on, let me catch that again. Oh, that. Okay, yeah, that's kind of funny. The way he's just like bribing him. Anyway, that was it, guys. I didn't actually know that they were collaborating. This is news to me. I'm sure a lot of you already knew this though, but I'm just learning. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see y'all in the next video. Goodbye.